Before the familiar sight of a quarterback receiving the ball from a hike, there existed a peculiar rule known as heeling it out. Until 1913, in the early days of American football, instead of the now standard snap, which wasn't legal until 1890, players could kick the ball backward to start a play. This method, while seemingly chaotic by modern standards, was an accepted practice in the late 19th century. Imagine the unpredictability of a game where the ball could be sent skidding across the ground with a swift kick, adding an element of surprise and strategy that kept both teams on their toes. The rule allowed for a unique blend of rugby-style play and the evolving tactics of American football. However, heeling it out also contributed to the disorder on the field, leading to frequent disputes and confusion over the ball's placement and possession. As the game matured, the need for a more consistent and controlled method of starting plays became evident. In 1913, heeling had been banned the way for the modern snap that we recognize today. Join us as we explore more fascinating aspects of the early rules of American football, setting the stage for the sport's revolutionary changes and the figures who championed them. The early rules of American football. Before Walter Camp's revolutionary changes, Camp's more orderly manner of initiating play did not require the team in possession of the ball to give it up. After Princeton simply held the ball for an entire half in its 1880 and 1881 contests with Yale, both games ending in scoreless ties that bored spectators as much as they frustrated Yale's players, Camp proposed a rule that a team must advance the ball 5 yards or lose 10 in 3 downs plays, or it would be obliged to surrender the ball to the other side. Camp was also responsible for having 11 players on a side, and for creating the quarterback position, he envisioned marking the field with stripes, and for proposing several other innovations. But it was those two simple rules adopted in 1880 and 1882 that most fundamentally created American football. Before Walter Camp's revolutionary changes, the early rules of American football were a fascinating mix of simplicity and chaos. In the late 19th century, scoring was vastly different from what fans recognize today. Camp devised a new scoring system in 1883 with 2 points for a touchdown, 4 points for the goal after a touchdown, and 5 points for a field goal. A field goal became worth 3 points in 1909, a touchdown 6 points in 1912. These early rules were part of the chaotic beginnings of football, where different colleges often played by their own sets of regulations. This lack of standardization led to frequent disputes and confusion on the field. As the sport evolved, these scoring values would be adjusted to better reflect the balance between different types of plays, paving the way for the modern game we know today. Join us as we delve deeper into the origins and evolution of American football, exploring the contributions of key figures like Walter Camp in shaping the sport's identity. At the heart of American football's transformation from a rugby-like game to the distinct sport we know today stands one man, Walter Camp. Born in New Haven, Connecticut in 1859, Camp became enamored with football while a student at Yale University. He would go on to become a player, coach, and writer, earning the title Father of American Football for his profound influence on the game's development. Camp's vision shaped football's rules, strategies, and very identity, leaving an enduring legacy that continues to resonate on gridirons across the nation. Camp's involvement with football began during its formative years. In the late 19th century, American football was a young and chaotic sport, loosely based on rugby but lacking standardized rules or a clear sense of direction. Different colleges played by varying rules, leading to confusion and disputes. Recognizing the need for order and structure, Camp became a driving force in the push to codify the game. As a representative of Yale in the Intercollegiate Football Association, formed in 1876, Camp played a key role in shaping the rules that would govern college football. His influence extended beyond mere rule changes. Camp possessed a keen understanding of the game's strategic possibilities. He envisioned a sport that balanced brute strength with cunning tactics, where intelligence and teamwork could triumph over sheer physicality. Camp's ideas, however, were not always immediately embraced. Many players and fans clung to the rough and tumble nature of early football, resistant to changes they perceived as softening the game. Yet Camp persisted, his vision gradually winning over the skeptics as football evolved into a more organized and strategic sport. One of the most significant challenges facing early football was the chaotic and often dangerous scrummage. Similar to rugby's scrum, the scrummage involved players from both teams forming a tightly packed mass, pushing and shoving to gain possession of the ball. This unwieldy formation frequently resulted in injuries and offered little opportunity for skillful play. Camp recognized the scrummage as a major obstacle to football's development. He envisioned a game that emphasized speed, agility, and strategic thinking, qualities stifled by the scrum's brute force nature. In 1880, Camp proposed a radical change, replacing the scrummage with the line of scrimmage. This innovation marked a turning point in football history. The line of scrimmage brought order to the game, establishing a clear starting point for each play and reducing the chaotic grappling of the scrummage. It also paved the way for the development of offensive and defensive formations, as teams could now strategize how best to position their players along the line. Another problem with the scrummage was its potential for stalemate. Possession could remain static for extended periods as teams strained against each other, resulting in a slow and tedious game. Camp sought to inject excitement and momentum into football, and his solution came in the form of downs. In 1882, Camp introduced the concept of downs, a revolutionary rule change that fundamentally altered the flow of the game. Under this new system, the offensive team had 3 attempts, or downs, to advance the ball a specified distance, initially 5 yards. Failure to do so would result in a turnover, giving possession to the opposing team. The introduction of downs had a profound impact on football's strategic complexity. Teams could no longer rely solely on brute force to grind out yardage. They now had to devise plays designed to gain specific distances, leading to the development of running plays, passing plays, and a more sophisticated understanding of offensive and defensive tactics. The concept of downs also injected a sense of urgency and excitement into the game. Each play carried weight as teams raced against the clock and the pressure of gaining the necessary yardage. This element of risk and reward, of strategic decision-making under pressure, became a defining characteristic of American football. Camp's innovations transformed football from a chaotic and often brutal scrum into a more organized and strategic contest. The line of scrimmage and the concept of downs laid the foundation for the modern game, paving the way for the development of complex playbooks, specialized player positions, and the intricate strategies that captivate fans to this day. In 1888, Camp proposed that tackling below the waist be legalized in order to offset the advantage of speedy backs streaking around the ends. The new rule resulted in the rise of mass plays, an offensive strategy that massed players on a single point of the defense, most famously in Harvard's flying wedge in 1892. This style of play proved so brutal that the game was nearly abolished in the 1890s and early 1900s. To ensure greater safety, the number of officials grew from 2 in 1873 to 7 by 1983. Over time, improvements in equipment also provided more safeguards against serious injuries. In the 1890s, players' only protection against blows to the head came from their own long hair and leather nose guards. The first headgear in 1896 consisted simply of 3 leather straps. It evolved into close-fitting leather caps with ear flaps. The suspension helmet, which used straps to create space between the helmet shell and the head of the wearer, was introduced in 1917. However, helmets were not required in college football until 1939-1943 for the National Football League. Improved equipment sometimes increased rather than curtailed the game's dangers. The plastic helmet, introduced in 1939, became a potentially lethal weapon, eventually requiring rules against spearing, using the head to initiate contact. As football evolved, so too did concerns about player safety. The game's physicality, while part of its appeal, also posed significant risks to those who dared to take the field. Early football was a brutal affair with minimal padding and little regard for the long-term consequences of repeated collisions. In the early days, players wore little more than rudimentary padding, often consisting of cloth or leather helmets and minimal protection for other parts of the body. These meager safeguards did little to mitigate the impact of tackles and collisions, leaving players susceptible to serious injuries. As awareness of football's dangers grew, so too did the push for improved safety measures. Camp, despite being a proponent of the game's physicality, also recognized the need to protect players from unnecessary harm. He advocated for rules designed to reduce dangerous play, such as penalties for unnecessary roughness and targeting vulnerable players. The evolution of football equipment went hand in hand with rule changes aimed at improving safety. Leather helmets gradually gave way to more protective headgear, padding became more substantial, and innovations like the face mask emerged to shield players from devastating injuries. Over the course of the 1905 season, 18 young men died from football injuries. Concerned that football might be abolished altogether, President Theodore Roosevelt in October 1905 summoned representatives, including Camp, from Harvard, Yale and Princeton to the White House, where he urged them to reform the game. On December 28th of that year, representatives from 62 colleges and universities, not including the Big Three, who would continue for decades to balk at submitting to the will of inferior institutions, met in New York to form the Intercollegiate Athletic Association of the United States, which became the National Collegiate Athletic Association, NCAA, in 1910. To reduce mass play, the group at its initial meeting increased the yardage required for a first down from 5 yards to 10 and legalized the forward pass, the final element in the creation of the game of American football. New crises prompted additional rule changes in 1910, requiring 7 men on the line of scrimmage, and 1912, increasing the number of downs to gain 10 yards from 3 to 4, to eliminate mass play. It would be another 3 decades, however, during which restrictive rules were gradually dropped and the circumference of the ball reduced to facilitate passing. Coaching in football has taken extreme turns. Rules against sideline coaching were established in 1892 and remained until 1967. Initially, paying coaches was controversial. During the war, most players played Ironman football, handling both offense and defense. Colleges returned to this format in 1953, but by 1965, open substitution and specialized positions became permanent, allowing coaches to dominate play calling. By the 1920s, successful coaches earn more than full professors, and eventually more than college presidents, leading to the multi-million-dollar salaries seen in the 21st century. The evolution of football, from its local roots to its national prominence, is a testament to its enduring appeal and cultural significance. Whether it's the rise of professional football, the passionate high school games, or the racial transformation of the sport, each chapter adds to the rich tapestry of American football history. These stories remind us of the power of sports to unite communities, challenge societal norms, and inspire future generations. If you enjoyed this journey through football's fascinating history, make sure to subscribe for more captivating stories and insights.